Hi everyone, my name is Anna Zharkova, I'm lead mobile developer, and today let's speak about Android widgets and Jetpack Compose, how make your app fancy. Widget is really old technology known for Android, and now we will speak about its old production and new way to attract attention to your application. Well, a few words about myself. I do a lot of native and cross-platform stuffs. Also, I'm a public speaker and write different articles about mobile development. So today we will speak about widgets and its conception, because even though widgets are old known for people who long developing Android applications, not everyone use it, and not everyone has experience how to create own widget and what for this thing is used. But many people used some built-in widgets in Android applications, in Android system. At first, we will speak about old before Android 12 version widgets and its conception. Then we will speak about new architect solution with glance, different features, and also we'll speak about all these limitations. And of course, we will speak about how to manage, support different states and updates of your widget, and how it could be made with different architect solutions. So let's begin. At first, what is a widget? It is a small part of your application with some functions displayed directly on your screen. So it allows you and your user to have a fast and easy access to the app, to open it from the screen directly. Also, it shows some portion of the functions of your applications directly in displayed without any need to open it. And of course, it could be nice, good looking, and it could attract attention to your application. And if it attracts attention to your application, you have more users. So widgets firstly was known about 29. On early versions, CapK in 2009, also there were some conception of widgets. They are first introduced, if it is correctly. I'm in Android development since 2011, and on this point, widgets are already existed. Since 2009, there were some stages of developing widgets. At first, they were just small widgets, then it was resizable widgets. Then on 2012, it was different categories of widgets, for example, launch screen widgets or home screen widgets. Of course, not everything was available to the user, but on these days, there were a lot of different features in widgets. On 2018, after the long pause in developing all this technology, there were no new features, reconfigurable widgets and something else. And the main new stage of the developing widgets was in Android 12. So it was a major improvement widgets, and it was the next stage and jumping into Compose from old technology used to build your app's widgets. So let's speak about the old widgets. So at first, let's think about its anatomy. It is a small piece of your application, and this piece of the application uses some remote use, some special kind of use with its own layout to show your UI of the widgets. For example, it could be some clock widget, some widget to show what song is playing in moment in your player. With a widget, some currency widget, news widgets, and different other widgets, even some small piece of game. So it was available on that days. And of course, to make your widgets working and listening to different events, you have to provide your own broadcast receiver to listening different events that should be a trigger to the changing the state of your widget, because just a small image without any dynamic content is not interesting at all. Of course, it could be the image of your dog, or maybe the portrait of your family, but without changing content, it could be not so interesting. And of course, we need to define some configuration. So it was special kind of app widget provider that defined app widget behavior, and also metadata and special app widget provider info in XML that was also provided in your as a part of your application. And there was special kind of app widget manager that was used to update app widget directly, depending on different kind of events. So, and your broadcast receiver, of course, have to be declared on your manifest. So everything was made with XML as previous pre-compose era. So all UI have to be declared in XML, and of course, a widget provider was declared with XML. So it is my old widget I developed in 2015. It was a calendar and it was interactive. And when the user clicked on some row, he was routed in the main application, and then he could add some new events. A widget provider in XML contained different kind of information. First, it was initial layout of your widget that should be shown to your user while your widget is uploading information or loading in states. And there have to be some limitations of size. The size depended on some kind of cell size. It was about 72 dp, and your sizes have to be a multiplied value of this number. And also you have to declare some kind of preview image that could show your user what is the sample of the widget it will be. And if you would like to use system mechanism to update your widget, you could specify here your period in milliseconds directly in app widget provider, or if you wanted another mechanism to update your widget, you have to use alarm manager as a scheduler. And of course, for the receiver, it was a special kind of receiver for your widget. It had to be exported, and it had to listen to events, app widget update and configuration event, if you would like to provide listening of changing configuration of your widget. So, and of course, it was not interesting to show just something simple. And to make your widget full interesting and working with real application logic, you have to specify some kind of architect solution. For example, if your widget have to show some information loaded from network or loaded from some local storage, or maybe to react to the changing of time, information of some kind of services, for example, to show the health state of your device, you also have to specify special kind of service. And this service could do something locally or use some kind of repository or other architect solution to get information from network or local storage. And then when everything was collected and it was a special time, your service sent broadcast event, and then receiver that was listening to this broadcast event updated your widget automatically. And just like this, you have to specify the provider. The provider was a receiver, and this receiver have to override update method, And in this update method, you collected all the data and set up your widget with new information. And of course, to work correctly with scheduling, you have to use Alarm Manager on this point. So it was pre-Android 12 era, and there were no problem with Alarm Manager and with other mechanisms of listening and doing some kind of background working. On this time, there was a lot of controls you can use in your application. So it was special kind of clocks, buttons, image view, progress bar, text view, collections, scrolling events, different layouts, and all this stuff was enough to provide correct UI. For example, it is another part of my old calendar widget, and this widget used only basic controls available to widget, and all this view was wrapped on special kind of remote view. But in some cases, you have to use some complicated controls. Even the widgets were interactive and they reacted to the touch event in some places. There could be no animation at all. So if you would like to provide the experience of animation, it had to be fake animation, and it had to be imitated with setting up and scheduling the changing of some events. For example, it was my animated scroll clocks, and on this time on 2015, oh, what a old I am, these clocks reacted every second and draw new image. So when you created the bitmap from your view with new data, you could set up this bitmap in remote view. So it was a solution in these cases, just like this. So turning your view into drawable and putting it in your remote view, and then you could call update your widget. Everything will be okay. So, and now we can use Compose. Many developers who just one time in their life tried Compose love it. And of course, it is a lot of simple features. And of course, it is developing and and there are still some problems such as navigation, updated states, and etc. But of course, nowadays it is a lot of solutions. For widgets, it is also a Compose solution, but it is a special kind of Compose. It is a special kind of glance framework, and this glance framework works with special app widgets and with special glance app widget receiver. And this widget receiver is special Compose runtime. I repeat special because it is not clear Compose. It is some limitation, as in previous work with widgets, and of course it is some kind of special features if we compare it with usual Compose. And this Compose runtime creates special remote views and XML. So it seems to be this same mechanism, but with some kind of wrapping, as it's always. So composables that we create and use for our widgets will be turned into remote view. And there is also support of interoperating into Android remote views. For example, it could be a solution if you would like to provide your old widgets UI into new stage of living of your application. To work with such kind of widget, we need to create special glance app widget, and it will have to override basic content function to create composable based on Compose controls, Compose functions. And to work with such kind of widget, we use not app widget provider, but glance app widget receiver. And in main property glance app widget, we return a new sample of our widget. And also there are some kind of features. For example, we can specify the sizes of our widget with new way. Also, it could be single size, exact size, or responsive, supporting to change the size dynamically. And of course, we could specify all this property directly in our widget with code without any XML. So it could be simpler than working with XML and reading different kind of layouts and putting in separate values. So Glance support different kind of composable functions such as boxes, rows, columns, text, buttons, lazy columns, image, and spacer. In most cases, it's enough to create basic UI. And of course, to work with composable, it have to use different kind of modifiers, but it is a special glance modifiers. It is not compose modifiers, it's a glance modifiers. And if you will try to put your basic compose UI into glance widget, while building, you will have no error. But when you will put your widget on the display, you will get such kind of error with a basic UI error layout. And you have to search in logcat what happened. So what happened in this case? In this case, I tried to create the UI just like I used in my clocks, but with composable. And it was nice looking in my activity, but for my widget, it showed me something red, strange, and I scared of it. So that is why I made Jetpack Composable with glance. So I shouldn't do this. And I shouldn't use material theme with glance. It is not supported. And in my widgets, I tried to change the animation dependent on the time property dynamically. So I used free canvas. And free canvas is not supported with glance. So the composable with free canvas are not supported. Remote views with animation or complicated logic are not supported. So what could I do in this case? Also, I could specify more interesting error UI to show it without this strange and scary light red rectangle. So it is also supported in Compose. But what should I do with my clocks? I could create some kind of remote view, and it will be special Android remote view, not the remote view we knew before. And this remote view will be wrapped in Android remote view and put in my content property. So it seems to be a solution. And also in my remote view, I have to specify all the data. For example, here I would like to put information about the time, and it will be information about hours, minutes, and text. And of course, I have to create, when I set up my view with all the data, I will create special kind of bitmap drawable, and this bitmap drawable will be put in with a set image view bitmap method in the XML layout of my remote view. So in this case, to work correctly with the remote view, I have to specify layout with image. And then this remote view will be loaded in Android remote view. So here is a sample that I have made some composition of my old widget UI and new composable glance app widget. So, but of course, it will be some other pitfalls, and then it will be a question how I need to specify the data in my widget, keep it state and update it, and how often could I update my widget. So, moreover, Glance widget has a special API that allows us just in composable layout specify clickable, and this clickable will be embedded in some of controls of some composable. And in this clickable, as a parameter, we can specify a special action run callback with some action. And this action has several methods, for example, action callback or with onAction method, or action run callback with onRun method. And on this method, we could call some logic, some business logic, for example. Maybe it will be our business logic with work manager. And also we have parameters with some data, just like with intent. And here is also the IDE of our widget that will help us to update it correctly. And of course, the context. We depend on context every time. Also, there is other callbacks we could use to specify different clickable actions. For example, we could start an activity or service or broadcast receiver from this clickable with the same mechanism. So now let's speak about how we should update widgets and keep its states. So we speak about our UI that we could use some simple composable or create remote views, and it will be a solution if we have complicated view. So now let's put here some data. When we are working with composable, we could use remember. For example, there is a sample of the code that was working on my composable activity. And here I used some state of current time, and then this time dynamically with launched effect was putting into some my composable and showed me correct time. If we will try to do the same with glance, it will not provide such effect. So you will not get the data displayed on your widget on this moment, and you will receive an error. So to update the state of your widget, we have to specify special data store. It will be special preference state, and this preference is based on data store will be a data wrapper and storage when we are putting data and transmitting it between main application and our widget. Even when we receive new event and new data, we have to use data store as a transmit wrapper to put it correctly in our widget. So in this moment, it will the schema of work of our application will look just like this. We have some business logic. In this business logic, we use our data store, and then we, with magic update app widget state methods, put this data store in our app widget. And the widget based on glance app widget, when we specify the special state definition with preferences glance state definition, has special property current state. And this current state with preferences allows us to get an access to the preferences we used to transmit data between our main application and our widget. So we are using the mechanism of some keys, and with this key we got information and put it in our composable functions, and we do it in the moment our widget updates and our composable is recomposed. To work with complicated business logic, we could use coroutine scopes, use cases, and of course Work Manager API at the main and recommended API to make some kind of background working, especially with modern APIs such as glance composable widgets. Everyone remember, I hope that on Android 12, foreground services in background are not working. So, and of course, we still using broadcast receiver to listen in different events. So in these cases, Our architect solutions could look just like this. We have our widget, we have our receiver, and then a receiver on special moment, or maybe it could be an action called with a clickable. We call in our use case call in our repository, get some data, put it in back, and then we put it in our preference glance state. It could be also done with in a receiver, and then our receiver need call something to update our widget. So it will be just like this. For example, we received some trigger. It could be done in broadcast receiver, and in our receiver, we are calling our use case, and on this use case, we collect all the IDEs of our widgets, and for all of this, so it is a callback of our use case. So when our use case return the data, we could, in this moment, update all our widgets at the moment. So what we are doing in this moment, we receive data and then we put it in our preferences. But to make our widget be updated, we need to call update at widget state. And it will be not triggered automatically, so we have to do this by ourselves. In this method, we are putting new data, and then while we are calling update widget, it will get information in its receiver and it will be updated. I mean, not in receiver, in widget mainly, of course. So let's summarize. To make our widget working with the state, but supporting composable solutions, we have to change remember to preference class state. And to make our code more clear, it will be a nice idea to put everything in use case. Of course, we could call it directly in a widget receiver. And then we need to call update app widget state, because it's not triggered automatically, to make all our widgets that will be triggered with a special IDE be updated. And now, at last, let's speak about time updates interval. It's at last, but not the least. So, for example, we have time calendar widget. You remember that in my application, there were three swirls. It was circle progress bar, and every progress bar was used for hour, minute, and seconds. So let's take a look. If we could update our widget every second. So when we are working with widget that dependent on some system information, we have to make this widget listening to the changing of this information. So we will specify the receiver that will be listening to the events of changing time. And to make this correctly with our application, we need to specify special action time tick, but this action will be triggered every minute, not every second. So in this case, we have to specify two solutions. If we will use system event, or we have to specify our alarm receiver. But we know that alarm receiver is not too recommended because it could impact negatively our battery. So in this case, you could change your logic, or you could be a bad guy and use not recommended API, just to try this. So also, sometimes we need to make some periodic requests to receive content. For example, just to take a look, we would like to receive content about the weather. We shouldn't do this every minute. We could specify some intervals, or also we could trigger it forcefully with some kind of button. In this case, we could remember our old friend work manager. And this work manager will be put between our receiver and our use case, and all the use cases will be triggered in worker. And then when we will finish our work, we have to put our data in preference glance state, and then with the previously known mechanism, we could update our widgets. So it could be done just like this. In our work manager, in our some kind of manager that will work with our work manager, we need to specify some kind of constraints or setting up intervals or policy of changing and updating. And then we could specify periodic work request with some kind of task that will be a worker. And of course, we could specify force triggering starting of updates. For example, it could be done with action run callback, the mechanism we spoken previously. And on that mechanism, we could specify not periodic, but one-time work request just to get data. And of course, at the end of the work of this worker, we could specify the periodic requests when we will receive all the data. So let's summarize. In these cases, we have not too much solutions, but it is work manager, forcing updates with the button, and listening to the events with broadcast receiver. And praying that our system will not put our application in some restriction bucket because we are asking events too often. And now let's speak about how also we can display what is not supported. We shown the solution with remote views, but what could be done also? Also, we could do something else. For example, if we would like to specify some kind of map, it is not supported in Glance. For example, it is from sample in people space widget. In this case, we could also use bitmap, but without remote view, we could directly put with some kind of snapshot or creating some kind of using some kind of other stuff. And this bitmap we could directly put in our image provider. So it could be done also without remote views. If you would like to not to use them as interrupting. So Android widgets at the moment support interactions but without animations. They support modern architecture approach, and I hope that this approach will be developed and we could see some kind of guides and special recommended recipes to make our widget working nice and increase our performance. Because I hope that there is not too much memory leaks in my code, and unfortunately, not every composable has glance analog at the moment, and but we have solutions with remote use or bitmaps that shorter, and there is still be the problems with time intervals and no guarantee for result because of buckets of restrictions. So the common problem is that not everything could be turned into an image. If we couldn't find solution, for example, to create correct bitmap without any snapshot or remote view, it will be also some problems, and sometimes it's hard to manage states and updates depending on some kind of logic. But widget hadn't to be too complicated. Maybe it is also some limitations from Android, as we have with services, to show us that we make our work too complicated. But also we could imitate complicated views with something simple. So there are some sources. I will upload my widget kit a few times later. And of course, there is some more useful articles. Thanks for listening. I'm ready for your questions.
Such a lovely talk. Do we have any Q&As? Anna, are you able to see the Q&As?
Yes.
Right. I think we have 4 of them. Maybe we can get started with addressing them in order.
I think I could return from my slides. Uh-huh. Well, Q&A section. So would you clarify about not mixing glance with composable functions? So some composable functions are not supported because they have different kind of modifiers, and these modifiers, when they have, for example, material theme or free canvas, they are not supported because main conception of the widget, it had to be static, and nothing dynamically changed with animation is not supported at all. So it is about this. What about glance backward compatibility? What do you mean about glance backward compatibility with composable? Well, I think that, or with remote views, if we're speaking about remote views, Android remote views, I don't think that we have to put glance widgets in old Android widgets, but remote views are supported in some kind or with some workarounds. So it could be used with glance. But I don't think that when we are speaking about putting glance composable into usual composable, it is a good idea. It is the same that as mixing remote views with usual views. How to use glance with wearable app or tiles? There is also some information how to do this, but unfortunately, I have no experience with creating application with glance to some wearable app. But I know that there is such samples at all. Does glance support swipe, gesture, and widget state updation based on that yet? No, it is not supporting swipes. Perhaps in some kind of glance simple widgets that available on your smartphone, on your Android OS. Swipe is not supported, but you could use some different clickables. So I think that swipe are not supported because it is also about free canvas and switching it. So, and on some simple remote views that could be used on Android applications in some smartphones, swipeable are also not supported. So it is clicks, taps, but not swipes. Can you please share demo GitHub link? Yes, but this GitHub is of uploading at the moment, so I need some time to put some order in my code. But of course, I will share it.
All right. I think that's that for now. Thanks, Anna, once again. And thanks everyone for joining in. We'll be back in another 15 minutes for the next talk.